there's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites.
Number 24 is content farms in Macedonia.
Бидејќи ако се направи грешка, таа ќе биде кобна. Нема враќање назад.
So Europe need to remain more sexy lady in the world.
Ајде, мајката!
Господа ја чува Македонија и низините граѓани.
I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvitin Chulimanov in Skopje, Macedonia.
And you'll note that we had no intro there because I am totally unprepared for this. This is the Macedonian Content Farmers podcast, and we are recording this podcast on Monday, the 19th of September. I was out of town all weekend, so Svet and I apologize a little bit for being somewhat...
We do it live.
We do it live, and on the go, and on the run, and I was completely absorbed in the committal ceremony of Queen Elizabeth II, which was just concluding now in London in Windsor as we record this. But we did talk a little bit on email and whatnot about some of the subjects we wanted to talk about today. It's been a couple of weeks since I was there in Macedonia and since we did our last podcast, and there are a couple of things going on. I think we talked about, in this episode, we'll talk about the new American ambassador, the departure of Kate Byrnes, some interesting issues going on with the Skopje mayor, Danela.
Big mess there.
What was it? Oh, and the referendum with the Talat Jaferi, the so-called speaker of the so-called parliament. Mess. Yeah. And then there was interestingly enough, I just noticed this morning, this survey from the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Foundation. We'll kind of maybe walk through that. But let's start at the top with kind of what's going on with Daniela, the mayor of Skopje, who was supported, ran as an independent in local elections, but supported by VMRO, and now there seems to be some sort of a falling out, and I think you've been following that. What's going on there? What are the details?
Yeah, it's a major mess for VMRO there. So remember, VMRO won the local elections last year, and specifically their victory in the Skopje mayoral race through Danela Arsovska, who is like a businesswoman. Although nobody knows what business she's into, honestly. She was head of a smaller chamber of commerce, which was set up to rival the large dinosaur chamber of commerce, which is more SDSM aligned. So she led like a more nimble, more agile new chamber of smaller and mid-sized businesses, a chamber of commerce, and she was very vocal during Gruevski's time as, supporting all the good free market reforms he was doing. So, we all knew she's like VMRO, but never a party member, not too outspoken. So VMRO nominated her for mayor. She won against Petra Šeligo from SDSM, and this prompted Zaev to resign. So Zaev said that he will resign if he loses the mayoral race in Skopje, and she won after this very ugly campaign in which SDSM were alleging that she has a Bulgarian passport, and she denied this. They were calling her the Bulgarian, they were using the Bulgarian word for mayor, kmit, or a female version, kmetica, to mock her. But in the end, Zaev resigned as party leader and prime minister, and VMRO had a full sweep of all urban municipalities in Skopje, all major cities across the country, and the major, the joint mayoral position of Skopje. But pretty soon we started hearing that she would hire VMRO people, then quickly fire them, especially in the PR department. We would notice this as journalists. She appointed, as was part of the coalition agreement, VMRO people to the key departments of the city, like the cleaning service, the parking, the water and sewage utility company. These are like the major, the Drisla dump, all the communal utility companies. Some went to Albanians, but who were also coalition partners, but most to VMRO. But we could sense something is going badly. And then we noticed a problem when she and the mayor of Karpos, Skopje Danela who is also elected with help of VMRO, but not a VMRO candidate. But okay, he owns his own turf. He practically earned VMRO's support, while Danela was elevated to the position by VMRO. She would have been nobody without the party supporting her. So we noticed both of them avoiding all the media in the country and only doing interviews and weekly broadcasts with one news site, Infomax, which is very outspokenly pro-VMRO news site, pretty brave, pretty courageous in uncovering crime on the part of SDSM. They were the ones who were on the election day going to different parts of the country, showing how SDSM people are bribing voters, intimidating voters. But we see them on this news site all the time, and then Skopje begins criticizing VMRO. But we say, okay, he has a lot of criminal charges from his previous mayoral mandates, so maybe SDSM is blackmailing him. Then Infomax begins to echo some of these comments, which is unimaginable. It would be like CNN turning on the Democrats in the US or Fox News on the Republicans. And then we realize, okay, wait, but Danela is also there, so she might eventually be part of this apparent turnaround, and she does. And now she began firing the VMRO-appointed officials. She had a very heated, even neutral people said, like, this is very ugly from her, very unseemly, like very, very dirty talking assault on VMRO leader Mickoski, immediately started using like SDSM talking points. The same stuff SDSM said in a statement the next day, like accusing Mickoski, like, come here, why are you hiding? Are you hiding of a woman? Like this cheap demagoguery, and people were amazed. We considered her like a refined, elevated person, more or less. Not to mention the fact that she's turning on her own party. And she accused, so basically there is one large contract in which some internationals, the UN or the EU, I'm not sure, they're giving like 130 million to the city. We still don't have like a sewage treatment plant. So practically all the raw sewage goes into the Vardar and straight to Greece.
Well,
yeah,
there's that.
Exactly, yeah. I fail to see the problem, yeah. But they were going to give us money to build like a sewage treatment plant, and there are two competing bids. One is from the Austrian EVN company, and the other, they wouldn't name the company, but it's American-Turkish, so it's obviously with the blessing of the American diplomats here. So Danela is openly agitating for this American-Turkish consortium, and she accused the VMRO manager of the water and sewage company of trying to sabotage she said, he's a crook, he's trying to divert the contract in the direction of the Austrian company. But, knowing them both, it makes much more sense that, and especially the way she has acted recently, Danela, it makes more sense that, she's the one trying to steer the deal to this Turkish-American company. And, this brings to the fore something that SDSM were saying about her father while she was VMRO candidate, that he was a high-level police official in the past, and practically now the thinking is that Skopje Danela, the mayor of Karpos, was threatened and bribed by SDSM, threatened with criminal charges, bribed by police officials, and VMRO says that Danila was contacted through her father by top SDSM official Mile Zicevic, who is a former head of the secret police, that he practically, through her father, that he turned her, probably with promises of all sorts of lucrative contracts which the government can offer you, to turn against VMRO, and she did in a very dramatic fashion. So now VMRO lost practically the mayor of Skopje and a mayor of a major municipality within Skopje.
Well, I'm wondering if the party is having any regrets in having supported, of course, what was the alternative at the same time. I do think to a certain degree this, and that's a very good analysis. Thank you for sharing that with listeners. It speaks to the issue, one of the issues, and a similar issue that we're having here, I think, in America right now, at least on the Republican Party side, and that is the quality of candidates and, where do candidates come from?
The trustworthiness.
What's that?
The trustworthiness.
Yeah, absolutely.
How many people betrayed Trump?
Yeah.
Some they were still in office.
Yeah, well, there's that, and of course, on the other side is, do we have actual conservative candidates, or are people just like you look at the Senate candidate in Pennsylvania, Mehmet Oz, the television doctor, who people discovered that he was a Republican, and Oz discovered that he himself was a Republican about 20 minutes before he declared for office. So you got issues like that as well. So I think these are this whole episode with Daniela kind of speaks to that issue, and the need for really good solid candidates when you are running for whatever office, whether it's local or national there in Macedonia as well as here. But that's an issue I think that the leadership of the party needs to really be looking at, and I'm not sure if they're doing that. To me it seems, and just kind of reflecting on my 2 weeks plus in Macedonia a couple of weeks ago, it seems that the party, VMRO, we can talk about this separately, but VMRO seems to be going through continuing to go through this period of some turmoil internally and trying to figure out, what are we doing, where are we going, who's leading, what's our message, what are our message points, etc. It seems to be a mixed bag at best, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of leads into this next question. Of course, the party did put forward this idea of holding a referendum on the French-Bulgaria proposal to finally get Macedonia into the European Union, for what it's worth. And I believe the party came up with enough signatures to put it before Parliament. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but then Tala Jafari, the so-called speaker, basically decided that he was judge, jury, and executioner all at the same time, and said that it's against the Constitution, which, of course, that's a dubious statement on his behalf. He doesn't have the authority to do that, apparently, according to a number of people I've read and listened to. So there won't be a referendum, apparently. But and interestingly enough, as well, I think going back to the survey we mentioned at the top of the show about the French. Or about the Konrad Adenauer survey, that the majority of citizens, 57.1%, according to the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, are against this whole thing. So there won't be a referendum. Tala Jafari squashed it. What is the party, the leadership are they going to try and do anything about this, or are they just going to let it slide?
Well, first of all, it was even worse than just banning the referendum. Jafari said that we cannot hold a referendum on an internationally acclaimed treaty. International law supersedes Macedonian law. So that was the craziness which they're going with. So practically we have to, there is an order from Bulgaria that they will block us. They will not let us open new accession talks unless we amend the constitution to bring the Bulgarians, to name the Bulgarian community, people, nation in the preamble of the constitution along with other nations, which Macedonian opposition resists because they see, listen, Bulgaria does not recognize Macedonians in any way, shape, or form as a minority, especially in their territory. So there is no reciprocity, and we cannot extend them the same courtesy which, let's say, Serbs or Albanians. They recognize Macedonians, so we have no problem recognizing them as well. But this is something that should be a matter of reciprocity. And VMRO blocks this because the government does not have 81 votes. Even with all the Albanian parties together, they're still short like 4 or 5 votes, and VMRO blocks this. But the government is threatening, is saying that they're going to have a repeat of 2018 when through arrests, through blackmail, through pressure from the US Embassy and other diplomats here, the government practically forced 8 and then eventually 9 VMRO members of parliament to vote for the name change. So they're practically saying we're going to do the same thing. They couch this, they say there are members of parliament from VMRO who see how correct and righteous our path to the EU is, our EU policies, and they're secretly in talks with us. So they're alleging that they have somebody already in the bag. VMRO responded by calling for a referendum. They're also calling on the government, okay, if you have the votes, stage the vote, if you're so sure that some of our people have switched, have turned. But most of all, Mickoski was saying that he wants the referendum to take place alongside with general elections. So practically his offer to the internationals, I suppose, was I'm going to remove this obstacle. I'm going to keep blocking this, obviously. That's the one card they can play at the moment. The other card is good management of the municipalities in our control, but obviously this is now becoming a problem. So he says, I will give you maybe a few votes in parliament, but in exchange I request early elections in which I expect to beat SDSM and form a government. And obviously he did not get this. I mean, I suppose he was in negotiations with the government, with the diplomats, but they didn't blink. They didn't give him the referendum. He made something that concerned many people. He phrased the question in the negative. So are you opposed to the French proposal, to the Bulgarian treaty? And when you do this, so when you are setting the referendum, you can say, do you support the Bulgarian treaty or do you oppose the Bulgarian treaty? And for the referendum to succeed, you need to have like 900,000 people voting, which is impossible. I mean, SDSM and all the Albanians barely got 600,000 in 2018 for the Greek treaty. So he's supposed to say, do you support the Bulgarian treaty? Then boycott the referendum, force SDSM and the Albanians to turn out again like 500,000-600,000 people, and it fails. Or even maybe not boycott, but hope that half of the usual SDSM voters are so outraged by the deal with Bulgaria that they will vote with VMRO, and then, expose SDSM as controlling only 100,000 votes on this issue, which, possibly even outright winning, like 900,000 people vote, and 500,000 are opposed to the Bulgarian treaty side with VMRO.
Right.
So VMRO beats both SDSM and the Albanians together. This would have been a major accomplishment. But he phrased the question the other way, like upside down. And this means that VMRO has the obligation to turn out 900,000 voters. This is impossible. This is undoable. SDSM would just threaten their voters, even those who are outraged at anything, at the Bulgaria, to stay at home, threaten them with firing from public sector jobs or other retribution. Albanians would say boycott to their voters, and VMRO would get maybe like 400,000 or 500,000 votes at most. So once he phrased the question, everybody was alarmed. They said, okay, this is disaster. We're heading for a defeat on this issue. SDSM can just accept the referendum, give you the referendum, and you will lose. And then what? I mean, then some of the weaker maybe members of parliament in VMRO would have an actual excuse to cross party lines and vote with SDSM because, the issue was obviously not important enough to the majority of the population to come out and vote. So everybody was concerned. What's he thinking? Maybe there was a lot of speculation in these media outlets such as Infomax, such as these now outlets supporting Danela Arsovska and Stevče Akimovsky, saying that, okay, maybe he's doing this on purpose. He has a deal with the Americans that we lose the referendum. He gives them the votes, but maybe they will allow him an early elections if he delivers this to the US Embassy. So it looked bad at start. For a while it looked good when Mickoski started insisting on early elections. People thought, okay, maybe he has an agreement with somebody in the diplomatic corps. But then SDSM just said, listen, we believe that the change of constitution can take place in the next year and a half, during which we are preparing for accession talks with the EU. So we are in no hurry to give Mickoski early elections. It's not like it's a gun to our heads that we begin accession talks tomorrow, that Albania begins accession talks tomorrow. This would force our hand. So if Albania is given accession talks in a few months, then we are behind Albania, and this would be a political problem for the government. So this might force them to go into a risky adventure, give VMRO early elections, and hope that, they do, not too bad in the elections, while at the same time the internationals hope or make sure that the pro-Macedonian side loses the referendum, even though, so VMRO may win the elections, may have more votes, more seats in parliament than SDSM, if we have two ballots, an election ballot and a referendum ballot at the same time. So VMRO likely wins the general elections, but could lose the referendum if not too many SDSM people cross the line and vote no on the referendum. So then the Albanians and most of SDSM could beat VMRO in the referendum. So VMRO would gain a government, but would be forced to implement the treaty with Bulgaria because they would lose the referendum. This was another option that was on the table. But then, essentially Jaferi said no referendum. We're going to protract this issue with Bulgaria, and we'll wait for a year and a half until it becomes a very urgent issue that it needs to be settled, and then we'll probably have a major a tense moment in a year and a half, unless the government falls in the meantime due to the spiraling out of control inflation and economic issues. But at the moment it looks that political issues are not going to bring down the government. On the contrary, they seem to be taking the initiative.
Right. Well, and yeah, you mentioned both inflation and of course this winter with the whole issue with energy and heating, not just for Macedonia but for all of Europe.
It's already cold. I'm actually having a blanket in mid-September.
Wow.
It started off real bad.
Oh boy. Okay, so you're gonna have
Russians are not doing so good on the battlefield, but they're winning the climate change thing at the moment.
No, Greta's winning the climate change thing.
yeah, sure.
Oh wow. Okay, well. It's still this week here, just as a quick... Here, let's do a weather forecast. Local weather brought to you by... No, it'll still be in the 30s here this week, so we don't have to worry about that. But yeah, those are things, actually, that could easily bring down the government. Any government. That's usually the way it works. It's economic issues. You've got very high inflation rate there. You've got the energy, et cetera, that's coming up. But since you mentioned the... You're talking quite a bit about the State Department and whatnot. Let's pivot, I guess, over to the new ambassador. I can tell, by the way, just looking at my Twitter feed, that Kate is no longer there because the US Embassy in Macedonia, their Twitter feed no longer has her picture there for the US Ambassador to Macedonia. It just has the United States Embassy, Skopje, the eagle. It's the... what do you call it?
E pluribus unum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the mark or whatever it's called. So anyway, so they haven't put in. So Kate has left the building. I do have to mention though that her last tweet on September 15 last week, she says, "Honored that for more than 3 years I had the privilege to serve as the U.S. ambassador to and I won't say the word, Macedonia. Happy to see Macedonian flag imagery progress these years and our continued partnership and cooperation. Thank you to citizens, partners, and colleagues for this unforgettable journey." well, and of course, I think my response to that tweet was, this wasn't progress, this is regress. And partnership, well, all of her pictures there's Tala Jafari, there's Bujar Osmani, there's Tace, there's Stevo, and then various pictures with children, the defense minister, etc. So those are her partners. It's always the left. So, but anyway, so she has left the building, and the new ambassador, Angela Aguilar, Price Aguilar. She was appointed in June by the president. She comes. I don't know when she's coming in.
No idea.
Yeah, it's worth remembering. She did serve as the public affairs officer. Interesting. Funny the way the State Department does this, because it says previous assignments include public affairs officer at the American Embassy in Skopje, Macedonia. It says that, but she is being appointed as the ambassador designate to the inward Macedonia. And it does note.
Who knows what it will be called or
by the time she gets here, by the time she leaves. Interesting. A graduate of the University of Utah. She speaks French, Macedonian, and some Hindi.
Yeah, she was in Pakistan staging the
right.
coup.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Okay. She was also in Budapest as well for some time, as well as
failing to stage a coup.
Yeah. And also in Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. Ouagadougou, which is the most. It's a joy to actually say that word because it's just fun to pronounce. The capital of Burkina Faso. Yeah. Formerly, talking about name changes, Burkina Faso. I'll let listeners think for 10 seconds here about what Burkina Faso was before it became Burkina Faso. It was Upper Volta.
Upper Volta. Yeah.
Now the interesting thing, of course, is that it never was a Lower Volta. So let that sink in.
Just like our situation here.
Oh no, there's Southern Macedonia, so we all know where it is. Yeah. So anyway, so she's coming in soon. Expect more of the same in the long tradition of U.S. ambassadors interfering per the State Department's direction in the affairs of smaller nation states. So we'll see.
Yeah, this just practically takes away all the excitement of having early elections and electing a prime minister, because the head of the government is practically, and the judiciary and the parliament and the legislature is appointed in Washington, so there is really no point in voting and participating in the charade, which we're, to the extent that we're allowed to have a charade. Even, I mean, they might do away with elections altogether. our overlords, the way things are going.
No. You got to have some semblance of a framework of democracy. So, anyway, we'll keep pretense. Pretense. That's a better word. We'll keep a lookout for that. But again, expecting more of the same. So the State Department, and again, I want to make clear we have a tendency. I have a tendency myself to say the Americans is the Americans. It's not the Americans. It's the State Department. No. So it's State Department will never love. Is always going to be from the left, progressive, liberal, far left. Border neo-Marxian, if you want to call it that, and they're never going to appreciate or work with the center-right in any country. They'll work with them only to the extent that they can undermine them. Let's put it that way. So, let's go back to this survey again, because I just found this before we got on the phone here, or whatever it is we're talking on to record this Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. What grabbed me was that the headline, this is a Republic article I'm looking at, survey, Pendarovsky rated as the worst president ever, French proposal unacceptable for 57% of Macedonian citizens. And if you scroll down to that part about El Presidente, he has a rating, where did it go? I lost it.
He's not.
Yeah, the most favorable of all Macedonia's presidents was the late Boris Trajkovski, followed by Kirill Gligorov.
Most favorable.
Most favorable, yeah. The highest rated. So Boris first, then Kirill, Branko, Jorge, and then Stevo with the lowest score. And what was interesting to me was I saw another article, I think it was last week, in which Stevo said that Macedonians who are against those Macedonians who are against the French-Bulgarian proposal have a low self-esteem, which I'm going to write an article about this. I have to, because there's a number of things that you can unpack from just that statement from Stevo that Macedonians who are against the French-Bulgarian proposal have low self-esteem. Well, number one, Mr. President, Macedonians have been and have had to live with humiliation for all these years on various levels, mainly brought about by two things: the incompetence of various Macedonian governments, and we know who they are, as well as the capitulation of various Macedonian governments, combined with the pressure from outside, mainly the State Department, the EU, and NATO. So they've been humiliated. They've had to live with that humiliation. And the second thing, Mr. President, is, well, if you truly believe that, and if people do have low self-esteem, what are you going to do about it? Shouldn't you be doing something about it as president? Shouldn't you be doing something to kind of increase the self-esteem of Macedonians, or are you just going to sit there and tell them that they have low self-esteem and they are not to be not to be taken seriously? I suppose.
Yeah, exactly right. You can be on a losing side for only so long before you eventually back up and leave. And Pendarovsky himself said that if I wasn't a president, I would have moved out of this country. It's a famous statement. He made in Serbia, and the Serbian media picked it up. And then he also famously, in an interview with the Bulgarians, said that Goca Delchev was a Bulgarian, and then a few days later said that, oh no, but actually he just said that he was Bulgarian, like so many now in Macedonia declare Bulgarian ancestry just to get a passport. In Goca Delchev's case, just to get like admission in the military academy in Sofia. But he didn't mean this. So now a lot of issues touching on here. So we actually do have like 150,000 Macedonians who have made the statement that they are Bulgarians, including the wife of Prime Minister Kovachevsky, including apparently Danela Arsovska, the mayor, like prominent political figures, former Prime Minister Ljubča Georgievski, of course. Okay, he did this to avoid persecution in Macedonia, but everybody has a reason. So to say that there is no danger of losing the Macedonian national identity to the Bulgarian national identity, after knowing all too well that hundreds of thousands of people have made the statement, whether they mean it, how deeply they mean it or not, who cares? It's mostly, to move to Germany, to Switzerland, to England to find better jobs, but it's still a defeat for the country, even any way you look at it. And then at the same time, you are part of you're working on implementing an international deal to rewrite our history through the Bulgarian narrative. So you'll have generations coming in and learning at schools that, Goca was Bulgarian, Tsar Samuel was Bulgarian. So, okay, but where do we begin? And in Pendarovsky's mind, in the mind of the left, well, that's easy. We begin with the Second World War. Right? This is the only part of history the left cares about, the partisan communist movement. Only not the entire partisan movement, just the communists in the partisan movement, which fits perfectly with the Bulgarian position. They say, okay, fine, of course, everything prior was ours, but okay, we'll grant you like a guerrilla movement that you had a civil war, and afterwards the left side discovered they were Macedonians. So this is Pendarovsky's offer to the country: endless concessions to Greece, endless concessions to the Albanians, endless concessions to Bulgaria, government elected with the minority of the Macedonian vote, majority of the Albanian vote, or all the Albanian votes supporting it. Practically, even the government, does nothing on its own without going to the US Embassy first. Go to Serbia to provide us with vaccines, with electricity now, with fuel. They're turning to Greece for fuel. I mean, the government does not, for vaccines, the government does not, meet basic public services it should. And everybody has some relative somewhere, like everybody has a relative either in Bulgaria or in Serbia or Vlach relatives. So if you are the losing side for so long, I have actually seen people who are outspoken opponents of SDSM, of the Greek treaty, shortly after say, okay, but listen, if we are the losing side now, we Macedonians, I have a Serbian ancestor. I can apply for public sector jobs through the Serbian party. I can take out a Serbian passport. Those taking out Bulgarian passports are less vocal, but as we said, they're far more numerous because Bulgaria is in the EU. There is an active resurgence in, not resurgence, okay, maybe resurgence is a good word, reawakening of the Vlach identity, even though often these are people who, it's a very small community, most of them don't speak the language, but they say, listen, I mean, I can count on support from Romania and Greece for passports, for travel, for whatever, and I don't want to be on the losing side. So it's actually a very active danger. It's not, but there is a position in SDSM that, listen, VMRO people are the ones who take Bulgarian passports, which could be true in the sense that VMRO voters are usually more lower working class people, as opposed to the elites of SDSM. They often do not have father or grandfather to get them a public sector job, enroll them in university, appoint them to hereditary public sector jobs in the healthcare, in the education. These are often people who are truck drivers, who are, drywall installers,
salt of the
plumbers.
earth. Yep.
Yeah, the normies. And they're the ones who say, listen, I can work in Macedonia for peanuts, or I can go to Germany and work, live as king, or at least make enough money. There is actually see people now going to Germany, working a little, and then coming back and, they live like kings in Macedonia for the remainder of the year. So if I'm going to be cleaning toilets, I might as well do it somewhere where I get paid for it.
Right.
So, yeah, these are the type of people that would be looking for a Bulgarian passport. So this is the SDSM position. They would say VMRO are the ones who have they're trying to turn defensive position into offensive position. They say VMRO have weak identity. They have always been weak toward Bulgaria, and now they're imagining a process of Bulgarization, while at the same time, we have an actual, very realistic process of Macedonians making concessions left and right, to the point that people are asking, is this our nation state? We are the worst off, possibly with the exception of the Roma. Everybody else has some backer, international backer, can gain some better position in life through ethnic background, except the Macedonians.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I was just, while you were going through that, I looked up one of his quotes. He said, this is Pindarovsky says, and this might be a loose translation, that there's no danger that we, the Macedonians, will eventually become Bulgarians through the European process. But that's not the point. The point is that the identity of Macedonians will be weakened to such a point that it becomes anything but Macedonian. Maybe, and this is over time, things like this move at a glacial pace compared to our 24/7 instant life that we all now live in the online world. But it is real, and just like water will, water in a rock that freezes, in a crack in the rock that freezes, will eventually break that rock over time. The identity of Macedonians will eventually erode to the point where, Macedonians think of themselves as something else, or they're gone, which then invites, of course, other malevolent state actors to come in and cause trouble in Macedonia, or take a chunk out of Macedonia, or whatever. And so for him to say that is, I think it's dangerous for him to say that there's no danger. And it's not serious either, because he's using it to score political points for his party, which, even though he's technically not a member of SDSM, he's a man of the left, which is unfortunate. So, broader picture, as you were talking there, I was thinking again, isn't it interesting that here in the United States, the Democrats, the party of the left, are rich white liberals, and it's the working people, increasingly Hispanics, salt of the earth people that are that are members of the Republican Party that are lean to the right. Same thing in Macedonia. It's these wealthier white liberals that are leading SDSM, and it is everybody else that is kind of the working people that are a part of the right, because they're tied to the land, tied to blood and soil, and there's nothing wrong with that, because that's the way most of the world works. We, the United States, are a creedal nation. We're built on these ideas, but every other country is built on an ethnic basis to a large degree. And if Pendarovsky thinks that is not in danger, well, it's in danger everywhere. Even if you just want to stick with the idea of globalization. Anyway, I'm going to write about that. So that was wrong of him to say that. But that maybe that's part of the reason why he's considered the worst president in Macedonia's history. So.
Yeah, they have their SDSM people, media outlets literally saying, like, days after the treaty was signed, well, okay, we signed the treaty and nobody turned Bulgarian overnight. but it's, but they're deliberately playing fools and idiots and trying to ignore what they're doing.
Right.
Because it's actually, it's really harming their own side. Like, it's a huge deal with their own people.
Yeah.
Who have historically been the ones who hated Bulgaria. So to be forced to make these concessions, like, it's really painful. It's really split their voter bloc, and this is their defense, like denying that they're doing anything. Yeah.
Well, it's good point that it does ultimately hurt their side. They don't see that though. But going back to what we talked about a little bit earlier, I do think VMRO needs to figure out how to get his house in order if they want to lead the country again, which I think they will at some point. It's just a question of when. So, well, let's do this. I gotta run. We're gonna have to keep this one short, I think. But I think we covered all the current issues. When we reconvene in a couple of weeks, it'll be even colder in Macedonia, and you can give us an update on how many blankets you're having to wear in the house because you can't keep your heat turned up. All right.
Yeah, we're off to a real bad start.
Yeah, not good. I'm sorry to hear that, but well, good catching up with you. We will reconvene in a couple weeks' time to talk about the latest events in Macedonia.
Yep. And I'll inform you if somebody has turned Bulgarian in the meantime. If I notice somebody on the street.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks so much.
Okay, buddy.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.